All right, so our next speaker, Carlene Brown, has a master's degree in education, counseling, and is presently known by students at the Palisades High School as the Quote Lady. She is passionate about educational and justice and racial justice, as well as progressive politics and interfaith cooperation. Carlene is writing a memoir and has recently created a website, www.familieshealingsexualabuse.com, with a blog that includes her personal experience, insights, and visions for healing this family disease. Carlene's speech title is also the title of her memoir, doing speech number 3 today, Born to Win in 2012. Born to Win in 2012, Carlene Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters and guests. In 1980, I had the experience of opening my life up to new possibilities in all places, a parenting class at Cal State Fullerton. And the instructor of this class, Dr. Fraser Paulson, introduced us to a very interesting textbook called Born to Win. I was immediately drawn to the photo in front of this textbook, this naked little girl standing with her arms outstretched to an ocean of possibilities. That little girl was me. That little girl was my daughter. And immediately as I looked at the very first lines of the first chapter, it resonated with me as true. Each human being is born as something new, something that never existed before. Each is born with the capacity to win at life. That night, I stayed up well past midnight, just poring over this book, and I ended up highlighting several truths about winners. Winners are authentic persons who actualize their unprecedented uniqueness and appreciate the uniqueness of others. Winners know their past, are aware and alive in the present, and look forward to the future. Winners have the courage to be real winners, not in the sense of beating someone else by always coming out on top, but by winning at responding to life. So 30-some years later, a not born to win society is portrayed in a film called Hunger Games, where children are pitted against each other to fight till their death. That film, in its opening debut last weekend, grossed over $155 million. I say it is time to put forth a born to win scenario of our future. So with this born to win attitude that I carry in my soul, in 2007, I was drawn to a compilation of essays that was recently published in 2007 called The Mystery of 2012, Predictions, Prophecies, and Possibilities. It's the possibilities that drew me to this book. The closing essay is by James O'Dia, who was the DC office director of Amnesty International, and he affirms the message of my Born to Win textbook. He says, if 2012 represents the cresting of the breakdown, it also represents a decisive turning point when we have no other option than to seek healing and to collaborate our way out of the chaos. This is in great contrast to the apocalyptic Hunger Games. He predicts that between 2012 and 2020, in every arena, we will see the emergence of a great experiment in collective healing. He ends his essay, "You were born for such a time as this." Knowing that I was born for such a time as this, I drew to myself the experience recently to share in a high school classroom a story from a 2011 book called, the book is called The Bond, Connecting Through the Space Between Us. And the story that I shared came in response to a student's question. So you don't think that sex criminals should have to go to prison? I offered an alternative to prison as I shared the story from this book. The story is about a deep dialogue that took place between a former Nazi and the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. It was a social healing meeting co-facilitated by James O'Dia, who is the co-director of the Social Healing Project. Early in the dialogue, the Jewish woman said to the German man, now there were a number of my family members that did not survive the Holocaust. What was your part in that? The German said, well, I did participate in beating up some Jewish people and in setting buildings on fire in 1938, the night of broken glass. But I was only 16. And she pressed further. If you had been 10 years older, would you have taken my relatives to the gas chamber? This was a hard question. He looked at the floor and finally he said, I just don't know. That moment of truthfulness transformed both the German and the Jew, because they realized that what he had said was, yes, I might have been a mass murderer. In the moment that he realized that, he broke down and started crying convulsively. And he said, oh, I'm a grandfather. My grandchildren are the grandchildren of Nazis. I'm in an abyss, the dungeon of history. I'll never get out of this. I'll always be connected to this. And the Jewish woman in that moment felt his pain as her own. She walked over, took him by the hand, looked into his eyes and said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. A piece of heaven dropped into the room in that moment. And the miracle of rebirth was granted to both the perpetrator and the victim. You threw a bridge across the abyss and invited me to meet you on it, the German said. And in that moment, they both felt the bond through their shared history. James O'Dia reminded me in his essay about 2012 that I was born for such a time as this. I was born to throw a bridge across the abyss and invite my ex-husband to meet me on it, with our children present, to feel that piece of heaven drop into the room, to feel the miracle of rebirth for all of us, and to feel our bond through our shared history. I know that all of my family was born to win. What were you called to do for such a time as this? How were you born to win in 2012?